everyone. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. We have a big workshop, which I'm really excited about. I hope that you can all hear. I don't think that this helps. I think this is mostly for the camera. It's just for the camera, so I'll just be loud. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, and we can probably close these doors in a minute. So, my name is Heather Hass, and I work with the Montana Abolition Coalition, and I'm so glad that all of you are here. I also work, I'm sort of the organizer that works with the Montana Association of Churches as well, but I also work with evangelical groups, so I pretty much work with any faith group and every faith group in the state of Montana. So, really excited that you're here to learn more about how to organize on this issue, and I'm gonna set this down for a second. We have some really special guests in the room, which I'm sure you've noticed already, but I'm going to introduce them a little bit later. I wanted to just talk about our goals for the workshop today. The first is just to talk about various faith perspectives and their positions on the death penalty. And as you can see, there's an array of different sheets up here. They each talk about different denominations and their views on the death penalty. So if you haven't already, please do come up after and grab some of those statements. There are sort of national statements from the denominations, and then there are also letters from some of the bishops here in Montana. So do feel free to grab any of this. I know it looks a little overwhelming, but take them with you, absolutely. Without further ado, if we could, I would love for you all to go around. And I don't know if everyone can see this, but if you could share, and we'll be brief about this because there are a lot of you, which is great. If you could say your name, where you're from, if you're from a faith group, and your number one reason for being against the death penalty. And I'm going to write our reasons up here. Okay, so let's go ahead and we can start over here with you, and we'll just kind of go around and share those.
Okay. My name is George Sherry, S-H-E-R-R-Y, and I live here in Missoula. And yes, I am part of a faith community, the local First United Methodist Church. And the reason I'm against the death penalty, partly for faith issues and partly because the states have made over 130 mistakes already. They've had to release over 130 people from death row. And in this regard, I think of the Illinois experience where college students were able to get 5 people off death row without too much trouble. And then some other folks came along and got another 8 off death row. So
Thank you.
that's probably where I'm coming from.
Right.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Berry. I'm from Missoula. I'm affiliated with UCC Church here in Missoula. And certainly those reasons, putting someone to death who is innocent is certainly number one. But I think there's something about vengeance is mine. Thank you.
I'm Barry O'Connell, and I'm from Great Falls. Yes, I'm part of a Holy Spirit Catholic parish there, our faith community, and I guess I have more than one reason that I'm against the death penalty. One is, I guess the most important is it's just not right to kill, no matter what, many of us. So it's just not.
I'm Jerry Clark, and I'm Barry's friend, and these two gals, and we're all from Holy Spirit Catholic Parish in Great Falls. And I guess my number one reason for being against it, we actually discussed this issue as a small prayer group several years ago. And several of us, including Barry and I, were for the death penalty at the time. And in that discussion, we learned a lot about reasons not to support the death penalty, and several of us changed our position entirely. And since then, we've heard testimony from people who have been sentenced to death and were found later to not have committed the crime. And we've heard stories about how it's affected the victims of crime as well, and their families, and how it has not been healing in any sense of the word. So that's kind of where I am.
And I'm Caroline Clark, and Jerry is not only my friend, but my husband. And all of the reasons given so far certainly are ones that I feel, but another reason that I have to be against it is that even if the person is guilty, they should have a chance to repent and be redeemed. And the death penalty negates that possibility for them.
Excuse my handwriting. I've been told I write like a 5-year-old boy, so sorry about that. Hopefully you can all read it.
I'm Cindy O'Connell with these guys, and in our small group discussion, it was like a 6-week one. We did watch Dead Man Walking and The Green Mile, and we did learn a lot of the facts, but to me, the death penalty is just not justice. There's just too many errors. I would like a picture with you.
Do you want to shake? You don't have to.
Oh, I'm Jamie Kelly. I'm with the Brazilian.
Tell them what your denomination.
I belong to the church. My faith group is Faith in Newspapers.
Spread the word.
And I'm not officially supposed to have a position in front of all you about the death penalty.
We're looking at your back.
As a president,
In fact, we got your back.
I will say as a Presbyterian, I don't find anyone irredeemable.
Wow, for Presbyterians.
Huge article of faith.
Catholics learn it too.
You have a fun follower back here.
Sister Doris, do you want to?
Okay, I'm Sister Doris, and I'm from Christ the King Church. And Jesus reversed the death penalty. He was done by forgiveness.
My name is Don Spreitzer. I'm at St. Paul Lutheran Church, my faith group, Western Montana Spiritual Development Council as well. All of those reasons up there basically, plus I think it's the epitome of cruel and unusual punishment.
Pope John Paul agreed with you. He says cruel and unnecessary.
I'm Pam Sheldon. I'm the administrator for the Montana Association of Churches. I guess I'm like in everything. I don't know if I affiliate, but I'm married at Lutheran, so I guess that's what I am now. But with the churches, I'm ecumenical minded. And when I took this position 2 years ago, I had not truthfully not had taken time to think of it and learn about it. And after hearing Marietta talk, I could not be against it because of her comment about the tainting the memory of her daughter. And I have 4 grandchildren, and yeah, the memory would be too hard. It's just not right.
I'm Maureen Tyler, and I come from a Roman Catholic tradition, and I live in Folsom. And for a long time, I was on the fence with the death penalty, saying, yes, this one should go, and no, this one shouldn't, until I too heard Marietta's talk. And I think an area that we need to pay really fond attention, if you will, to is reconciliation.
My name is Bob Scott. I'm from Hamilton, and I'm a member of the St. Francis Parish there, and serve on our Social Justice Committee. I probably came slowly to the recognition that the death penalty is wrong, although I've been against it now for a number of years. As an activist, I've been an activist in politics all my life, and even back in the 60s was a little more maybe a little violence here might help us. I've come completely around nonviolence in all activities is the only approach towards getting any change done, and the faith reasons which have been nicely enumerated here are very important to me. If Jesus walked among us now, he would not support any death penalty in Montana. And I think we would immediately see how wrong it is. And I agree with this gentleman. I think it's unconstitutional, it's cruel and unusual punishment, regardless of what the courts may have said over the years. I think it's right there in our Constitution.
I'm Donna Young, and I'm the pastor of the First United Methodist Church in Plains and Paradise. And I just, for all the faith reasons listed there, but I agree with what you said. You just don't stop violence with violence. It just doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't work. Anywhere, anytime.
That's right. And Sister Helen, we'll get to you. Don't be worried. Someone over here want to start at this table?
I'm Tom Hagan, and from Missoula, along with Christ the King Parish. And I'm opposed to the death penalty because it's unjust, it's immoral, and mistakes can't be corrected.
Yeah, well put.
And I'm Mary Langendorfer, and I'm from Missoula Parish, and I have just actually started thinking about this a little bit more. And I think it's also one of another instance of man's arrogance in thinking and judging someone else.
And I'm Mark Douglas. I am the co-pastor for the United Methodist Campus Ministry over at the university. I'm from here now, but really from Texas, and while I agree with all the faith reasons that we've outlined so far, the fact is that practically it just doesn't work. It doesn't do any death penalty, doesn't accomplish any of its goals, and it's expensive as hell. So.
My name's Ken Dyeroot, and I'm from Missoula. I grew up in the Lutheran Church, and now I attend the University Congregational Church. And I'm part of the civil justice system, not the criminal justice system, but it's a human system, and it makes mistakes, as other people have said. And I think it's about as contrary, that thing that people can do, as contrary to Christ's teachings as anything people could do.
My name's Tom King. I'm from Missoula. I'm a ordained minister in the Covenant Church. The Covenant Church closed here a number of years ago. So I worship at UCC and serve as a minister of spiritual formation there. Number one reason I see Jesus' death is putting to death the death penalty. Its response was forgiven.
I'm Sister Marie Kaur. I'm a native of Missoula, St. Anthony's Catholic Parish, retired St. I find that to put somebody to death is inhumane, and to allow the state to do it in my name is reprehensible.
I'm John Fletcher, also from Missoula. I probably should pass on being part of the faith group, where my church has two classifications, and I'm a member, not a communicant. They make that distinction, so I'll respect them and leave them anonymous. And I'd say my number one reason is I try and be an engaged and committed part of my society. But this is part of our acts that I profoundly disagree with.
My name is June Collins. I'm from Missoula. I'm an Episcopal priest, and all of those reasons.
Let me start.
Sorry.
I'm Father Herb Pins. I'm pastor in Dillon, Montana right now. One of the reasons I'm so opposed is between 1997 and 2004, I was the chaplain at the men's prison, and I used to visit the guys on death row every Saturday morning. I got to know Dan Johnson very well through that time, and he has since had his sentence commuted to life in prison, which I worked very hard at getting changed. What I learned in getting to know Dan on a weekly basis was that he was a human being, and to me he would admit his murders, one on the outside and one inside the prison. And I saw him change, and that was very encouraging to see his conversion and to see him repentant, even though he didn't want to show that to any other inmates or to the wardens. So I had made a pact with Dan that if he was executed, that I would be with him. And I was anticipating that I would have to do that. The other reason that I'm so opposed is, as a trained theologian, I would make a very hard argument for the fact that since Christ has died in a redemptive way for everyone, no other death can add to that. Killing other people will not help the redemption of anybody. Jesus has already taken care of that.
Trained theologian.
9 years.
I'm Jan Staten, a member of First United Methodist Church here in Missoula and Western Montana Spiritual Development Council. And I think it really comes down for me that we all need redemption, and we should never take that chance away from anyone. And when I read the story about Jeffrey Dahmer, who fortunately committed his horrible murders in Wisconsin, which never has had the death penalty, and came to understand himself as somebody who could be redeemed even after that, before he was killed in prison, not by some other inmate. I really came to understand that there's nobody outside of God's will.
My name is Matt Randles. I'm the pastor of Headwaters Covenant Church in Helena. And again, every reason up there, but I think because I worship a Lord who was unjustly executed, how can I be part of a system that can unjustly execute?
I'm Deacon Bob Lane from Three Forks Catholic Church. For all those reasons, and also because of the inequality of how the death penalty is handled out.
And I'm going to stand because I'm 4'11" and 3/4 of an inch. I used to be 5'1/2", but as you get older, you get smaller. Anyway, I am from, I'm not a native Montanan. I'm originally from Homestead, Florida, south of Miami, but have been in Montana for about 14 years. Have lived in California where the death penalty and executions have been rampant, put on hold, and back again. I'm a member of St. Francis Xavier Church, which is Jesuit, so I'm Jesuit formed. We have a group there called Just Faith. It's a program not just for Catholics. There's a Protestant, it's faith-based. There's a Protestant formula, there's a Catholic formula which goes with Catholic prayer. Methodists use this also. It's out of Louisville, Kentucky. Just look up Just Faith on your website and bring it into your church. Have been a member of this group for 3 years, and we just completed a non-violence violence communication study. The death penalty is violent. And violence does not form peace in any way. If you want peace, there was another trained theologian that said, if you want peace, fight for justice.
I'm Gail Gilman, First United Methodist Church in Missoula, and I believe in redemption and the power of nonviolence. And I also think that for those who have anything to do with putting people to death, it's got to affect something inside, something within that just kind of doesn't get thought about too much. I also have over the years grew to how I believe against the death penalty. Marietta Jager Lane was a huge influence. I used to live over in the general area where her daughter was kidnapped. And I can remember still seeing the flyers around when they were looking for Susan and how affected I was by them. And that was that was in the 70s. And I have continued to follow her through the years. She was in Issues of Parade magazine, and anyway, just kind of following what she has, the work she has done, and the stand she's taken, and a lot.
I'm Barb Zuring. I'm from Blessed Trinity Catholic Church and also Western Montana Spiritual Development Council. And those reasons really speak to me as well. Especially, I was very moved by Marietta Jager Lane's story, and especially the notion that, killing another does not honor the victim's life, and that really spoke to me.
I'm Rita Jankowska Bradley from Missoula, and I'm a Maryknoll affiliate and a member of the Western Montana Spiritual Development Council, and represent Jubilee Montana Network with that. And I guess maybe all those together is, I think it's truly unjust, it's racist, it's elitist, it's classist. And I happened to be at a rally in Washington, D.C. in late September after the World Trade Center was bombed. And the people who lost their families said, again, not in our name. And it was just so incredible. And just thinking right now, maybe think even harder. We lived in Butte for 20 years, and our next door neighbor, she had lost her daughter coming home from school. She was the most beautiful woman, this mother. And actually, in a way, I guess, she considered me her daughter, and it's like, what an honor. Here she lost her daughter there. That was quite a gift.
My name's Lori Franklin. I live in Missoula, and I'm associated with Har Shalom, which is the Jewish synagogue in Missoula. And I'm also a lay leader there, and I participate in the Western Montana Spiritual Development Council. And before I became a committed person of faith, I was still opposed to the death penalty for many practical and individual conscience reasons. The fact that it's irreversible, that government has no place wreaking violence on society, that mistakes are made, that there is no justice in meting out death as a punishment for any crime. And since becoming an active participant in the Jewish religion, I've discovered that despite the fact that the Old Testament has many instances where death seems to be a punishment, the rabbis of the first centuries were so uncomfortable with this that they devised a system of evidence that was so difficult to meet that you just basically but you can think for yourself and interpret things. And it really speaks to me to hear what has been said today about Christ's teachings. It makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I like to see carried forward through the rabbinic and the Christian tradition is that in my denomination, this is not a controversial issue. The rabbis of our modern day within Reform Judaism have come out to say that the death penalty does not reflect the sanctity of life. The death penalty does not underline that we're all created in the image of God, that the rabbis of the first centuries and the Middle Ages clearly were not convinced that the death penalty had any spiritual or value. And I think in our modern society, the violence of government performing, taking away life is not something that nourishes us either spiritually or in our civil discourse with each other.
Well, everybody look at this list because it's pretty phenomenal.
May I
yeah,
use about 2 or 3 sentences to expand upon Gail Gilman's initial comments? My next door neighbor from years and years ago participated in Montana's last legal hanging, and shortly after that he developed a very, very serious alcohol problem. So it does really affect these people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm very encouraged. I hope that you're all encouraged that there are so many wonderful people in this room who care about the same things that we do. And the truth is, there's so many other people in Montana who do too, who aren't here with us today. So please be encouraged by that. I also wanted to point out the variety. There are a lot of faith reasons on here. There are some non-faith reasons on here. We know that this issue has so many different facets, and it's so complex and complicated. And so obviously there's no sort of one magic key that will unlock the door to abolition of the death penalty. I wish there was. But we always say that it's so important when you're talking to people, and I hope you will about this, it's important to present them with a menu of options. So of course it's important to talk about why it is that you care about the death penalty, because that's very important that you share that with people, and not that you should ever let go of that, but maybe if that reason isn't resonating with the person you're talking to, you could talk about something else, and that doesn't mean shifting away from faith reasons or anything like that, but maybe you want to try talking to them about innocence if you've talked to them about murder victim family members before and that doesn't seem to resonate. When I talk to legislators, you wouldn't believe I'll talk to one, they don't want to hear about cost at all. They just want to hear about victims' families. The next one, all they care about is cost, So it's important to just kind of to know that there's a lot of room to move around when we talk about this issue, and that we don't have any one reason we're against the death penalty. There are hundreds. So definitely be encouraged by that. I want to now introduce Jana Staten, and we are so lucky to be able to work with the Western Montana Spiritual Development Council, and they've been a huge help in our effort. So thank you to all of you who are affiliated with them, and they helped so much putting this together. And Jana has been wonderful to work with, and so I hope that you'll help me welcome her.
Thank you. So I have the honor and great pleasure of introducing a new friend, Sister Helen Prejean. You have to know that when the Spiritual Development Council kind of got going, we had a hit list of big names that we wanted. Bishop Tutu was one, Jim Wallace was another, and I think you were the third. And so we're 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We had to wait a little bit, but it's been worth it. And I just wanted to say in introducing her and letting her really help us understand this, that in reading her book, I was struck by the fact that her involvement in this issue wasn't an intentional calling from God, that the heavens opened and God said, Sister Prejean, I think you'd like to do something about this. It was kind of, she agreed to be a pen pal, something any of us might be willing to do. And so it's kind of encouraging to know that the nuns don't have a special pipeline. They have to figure it out just like the rest of us. But the difference is that she went on to make this a mission for her life, and especially to understand that secrecy and not talking about it is what allows it to continue. And I think that's true in the faith communities. We really don't talk about it. It's really not our problem. It's just under the radar. And I think the change that she's wrought by her books and her work has been to get us to talk about it and to think about it and to have the courage to talk to others about it. So we welcome you back to Montana. And thank you.
I'll just hold it, and that way we'll be sure. How long I have? 20 minutes. Little insight into Darwin here, because people say survival of the fittest, Darwin, which means blood and tooth and claw, fight that way. What he really meant was fit in the environment and what's happening. Those that fit in and can read the signs of the time, to put a little faith perspective on it, live and endure and evolve. It's the whole thing of life. And I want to fit in, so that's why I want to be careful of my time. This is so rich already. You know who I love the best in this room? Are the people who came and said, I used to be for the death penalty, never thought about it, but now I don't know. My wife worked on me or whatever. And changed. And this has been my discovery. 20 years now, getting on the road, crisscrossing this nation, all kind of audiences. You know what the thing is about people in the death penalty? Somebody just said it. It's not that people have thought about this and are deeply committed to having the death penalty. They never think about it. We do not live in a culture that reflects deeply. We have a fast-paced life, look at Fox News, get the sound bites, not think. And what spirituality is about is to go beneath the surface, to think deeply, and to connect at the deepest wellspring. And that's what life's about. And that's what spirituality is really about. So all of us that come in here, it's fascinating to hear everybody. We're like this little network. I want to take my little few minutes to just share with you, and it is about the journey, and it is about how do we discourse. Any faith perspective is always, how do you share the good news with other people? What's the journey? What's the witness? What's the life-changing thing? Let me tell you, whether it's Jesus or, in Judaism, they figured out a way not to kill anybody. They figured out a way because wise rabbis took the scriptures and meditated on them and interpreted them and chose life. And we all are engaged on this journey. Now know this, that in the 80s, when I began, I wrote to Patrick Sonnier in 1982, and lo and behold, in April, it was just the anniversary, April the 5th, he was killed in front of my eyes. I watched a human being strapped into a chair and electrocuted to death. And mine was the last face he looked at before they killed him. So, and if you notice in the accounts of Jesus' death, they just put like one sentence, and they crucified him there. What words are you going to put of the killing of a human being? And I was drawn into this, sucked into this, seduced into this. Sneaky God, get me into this. You don't set out to say, I'm going to be a nun who goes to death row. You don't set out to do this stuff, but you get involved with human beings. And what cracked me open was, first I came to understand of Jesus was always on the side of the poor and the marginated people and the thrown away people and the despised people and the hated people and the people who are regarded as this is the refuse of human life. These are scum. These are animals. Opening salvo from the chaplains that I interviewed to go to the prison in Louisiana, the priest said to me, Sister, you have to remember these people are the scum of the earth. They're going to try to con you. And this was the chaplain at the Louisiana State Penitentiary. Since the 70s, mainstream churches the leaders began to issue statements against the death penalty. I mean, I remember we assembled the list of all of them, Presbyterian, Methodist, Catholic bishops, about the death penalty. And it was statements on paper. And you got to the people in the pews, and the people are saying, fry him, because you never heard it from the pulpit. Because people who are the leaders in the community know to open up that can of worms, to get into these controversial issues. And that was the first discovery about being with poor people, is that controversy starts following you like a hungry dog when you start getting involved with poor people. Look at the healthcare debate. If you're taking the side of poor people in the healthcare debate, look what happens at the Thanksgiving Day table. Look what happens. And because I was privileged, see, I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's I'm writing the spiritual journey that led me to death row right now. It'll be my third book, and it's wonderful to go back to just see how grace unfolds in your life. I never made the connection between justice and my faith. I lived in a spiritual. I wanted to be prayerful. I wanted to be holy. I was a good nun. I taught kids. And African American people are being shot by the police. They're dying in a neighborhood literally almost abutting our mother house in New Orleans. And I never went to any of those places. I didn't know any of those people. And what did my faith have to do with going and being involved with African American people in the inner city? I mean, the big problems, that's what God takes care of, right? I mean, you pray for all the poor people in Haiti or whatever. Yeah, we send some money. Or you get your cans for Thanksgiving with the yams and the baked beans and the turkey and send it to the poor. I thought charity was just fine, what you had to do. What do you mean we're going to get in there and start to change structures? What? I didn't know about social sin. I didn't know about it. And that waking up. A great story about Buddha. He's coming along and people say, what are you? Who are you? Are you a god? Buddha says, no, I'm not a god. Well, what are you? You a prophet? No, I'm not a prophet. Well, what are you? He said, I am one who is awake. And all spiritual traditions are about awakening. And that connection that we are all brothers and sisters. And now it's even being extended to Earth and the planet. And you can't live in Montana and not be connected to Earth. So the awakening led me to poor people, saw them in the neighborhood. So the prison coalition offices, they are meeting people now involved in working for justice. Like us, people involved. Best definition of justice ever heard, just us. You ever notice? Small group of people, but you're awake and you're active. And so things begin to happen. Along the way, the discourse and conversation and relentless dialogue with my church, the Catholic Church. When I started out in 1980 after Patrick was executed, and I come out of that execution chamber, throw up, never watched anybody be killed in front of my eyes before. And so I knew I was a witness, that I had to start telling the story. We needed to start organizing in Louisiana, and the one I had the most trouble from who wouldn't do anything was Archbishop Hannon, our Archbishop, because he'd been in the military and he believed in the death penalty. And we couldn't get our Catholic bishops to do anything because their statements were so watered down, the prosecutors would quote the bishop's statement, and that's not helpful. It is not helpful. Could have used some trained theologians here, but anyway. So the Catholic bishops had a statement, but if you notice in the statement from the beginning, it had huge loopholes in it. They could see the practical things that were wrong and all. But principled opposition to the death penalty with no exceptions. Amnesty International had it. Universal Declaration of Human Rights had it. But not our Catholic teaching. Because they upheld the right of the state to take life, and then just says practically it furthers violence. But man, I'm telling you, with all the loopholes in it. And so here goes in its relentless discourse. It's keeping the dialogue going. It's not giving up on the dialogue. It's keeping it going in the parish and with the archdiocese and with the people. Here's the thing I know about the church. The church is really the people. I mean, the church is really us. The believers are really us. And the leadership sometimes gets it and sometimes they don't, but it's the gospel that we have to be faithful to, all of us, all of us. And in the second book, Death of Innocence, I talk about this ongoing dialogue with my Catholic Church. And I talk about, in the second story, a man by the name of Joseph Odell in Virginia who was innocent. My second book is about two innocent people that I was there at their execution and accompanied them. Joseph Odell in Virginia was one of them. In Italy got involved. They sent delegations over from the Italian Parliament to try to save Joseph Odell. Pope John Paul heard about it, got involved, and I got to have a direct, in his lap, dialogue, not me in his lap, but the letter I sent. It's amazing, but anyway, the letter got into him of 14 years of pastoral experience of being with people who were being killed. And pastoral experience is what we all need, where when you're having the theological discussions and when you're having the human rights discussions, when you're having the civil rights discussion, when you have somebody who comes in and says, let me take you there. And two big questions to the Pope were, when I'm walking with a man to execution, he is rendered defenseless. He has chains on his legs. His hands are handcuffed to a belt around his waist. He's surrounded by guards, and they're going to take him down this hall, and they're going to strap him in, and they're going to kill him. And he says, sister, please pray that God holds up my legs. I said, Your Holiness, does the Catholic Church only uphold the dignity of innocent life? That's what the Catechism says. Inviolable dignity of innocent life. Well, what about guilty life? And there is no dignity in this death. And then when you have a chance to dialogue, that we have to be really honest. And the honesty came through was, I said, you wrote a great encyclical in 1995, The Gospel of Life, and you took the death penalty and you pushed it to the edge, and the Pope did. And he said, because we have a way to defend society, that the death penalty should be rare, if not non-existent. The crucial thing with the theologians and the people who are going to debate this is, but are there any exceptions? Are there any exceptions? Because if there are exceptions and death is still on the table and government's going to be the one to decide if where the exception is, you still have the death penalty. And you have the designer death penalty arguments, including Obama, who has said, I'm for the death penalty for a truly heinous crime, no doubt about the guilt. And an interesting thing that he puts in there, in order that the full outrage of the people can be expressed. That's Obama's position on the death penalty that he stated when running for president. So here you had the Pope in his encyclical saying, it should be rare, if not non-existent, because we have a way to defend society, so we should use bloodless means. But he added in there, but in cases of absolute necessity, the state can execute. And I said, Your Holiness, your words are going to be quoted for death, because whenever anybody wants to execute anybody, they will claim it's an absolute necessity. In Kenya, a 14-year-old girl that has a baby out of wedlock, after the baby is weaned, a hole is dug, the child is put in, and she's stoned to death. In Malaysia, when you walk into the airport, death penalty for drugs. Death penalty, you can't have it trusted to governments to decide when you do this or that, an absolute necessity in us that we can kill you. You can't. You got to take it off the table. And providentially, the Catholic district attorney in New Orleans quoted the Pope's words in an interview. And he said, we can't get enough death penalties in New Orleans. And here the Pope has said, in cases of absolute necessity, well, every death penalty we get is an absolute necessity. And I could put the words in his lap. Your words are going to be quoted for death. The Pope changed the catechism. The Pope did it. It wasn't Cardinal Ratzinger then, it was Pope John Paul. And then when the Pope came to St. Louis The catechism was changed in 97. All this is in Death of Innocence. The whole story's in there of this whole journey. For the first time, the Pope addressed the death penalty. He had been in the United States 4 other times. Because I remember when he was in Denver, we were trying to get the Pope to speak out, trying to get to the bishop there, to get to the Pope to speak out, speak out. And he never did, but now he did. And he put the death penalty for the first time with the other pro-life issues. And when he made the statement, you know, about the usual pro-life issues that we concerned about in life, like unborn children, born children, mothers of unborn children, euthanasia, physician-assisted suicide, and he added, and no to the death penalty because it is cruel and unnecessary. And he added, even those among us who have done a terrible crime have a dignity that must not be taken from them. And when that happened in 99, then the Catholic bishops began to line up behind the Pope, and they have declared a campaign to end, Catholic campaign to end the use of the death penalty. And bishops did what bishops do. They printed a pamphlet for that campaign. They printed a really nice pamphlet. And they declared Catholic campaign to end the use of the death penalty in 2005. They did a poll before they did this and showed that there's the biggest shift in opinion among Catholics on this issue than over all the years where they've been trying to get people about abortion with that heavy top-down kind of thing of depriving politicians of communion or whatever they've been doing. On the death penalty, it's been a huge shift in Catholic opinion. And this was done in 2005. Among adult Catholics, support for the death penalty is down to 48%. Young Catholics, ages 30 and younger, it's 42%, which means that 58% of young Catholics that are getting it through education now do not believe in the death penalty. It's been a huge shift. And you can mobilize. So what we did was we got a group of people in D.C. We met with the USCCB, with John Carr, who works with the issue of the death penalty with the bishops, and had a grassroots group of Catholics to start Catholic mobilizing network to take the bishop's campaign and get it in the classrooms and get it in the pews, and that's what this little card's all about. So when you go on their webpage now, and it says campaign to end the death penalty, you're going to see Catholic mobilizers, and that's us. And it's always us. Because we're the one in the trenches, we're the ones in the field, we're the ones who do it. But now it's working in collaboration with them. And I'll just end by saying it's all about discourse. It's all about how do we tell the story, how do we get people to voice. Many of them have never just been asked the question, now tell me why you're for the death penalty, including legislators. We've got to have this conversation with them. What's your reason? Why are you for it? And then to begin the conversation. And then if you could, what the movie of Dead Man Walking did was it presented discourse on the death penalty in a new way. Instead of having a polemic film with all the arguments against the death penalty, it brought people over to both sides, treated the victims' families with great respect. Like, look at this trauma they've been through, look at their pain. And then ends with the execution of the person who did it so that the audience walks away and says, well, what did that do? And are forced to think. Spirituality is always about thinking deeper, going deeper. And then if you can get that dynamic of having a film and then also having a book where they go and they read. See, journalists know too. I mean, no kidding. When people are reading, we are in a quiet place and we are not debating with anyone. We're getting new information and we're using our imaginations and we can come to a different place. Reading, the whole writing profession of journalism and writing books is a very precious profession because you invite people into deep reflection. And if you can write an article, or you write a book, or you write an essay, or you write something in your Catholic bulletin, to bring people into a deeper place, that's what it's all about, an invitation to go deeper. And I do want to add also, that we have the play of Dead Man Walking, that Tim Robbins, the first playwright in the United States, he wrote a play and he's given it over to the young people to perform in schools, to get theater as a part of education. 2 departments have to pick up the issue of the death penalty. So discourse is going on in the school, and it's live theater. It's for high schools, and it's for universities and colleges. And you can go on the webpage, you can go to DMW, deadmanwalkingplay.org, and just see the schools that have done it. We have to have dramatic ways of bringing people close to this issue so that people can reflect on it and get it out of people's heads, and then it makes you dig and get information. And once you start learning about it, we know this, we have been knowing this, and I'll end with this. Justice Thurgood Marshall, way back, said, the American people say they believe in the death penalty. But he says, if we educate them on this issue, and they know what the death penalty is, how it works or doesn't work, support will decrease rapidly and people will not support the death penalty. And I want to just tell you, 20 years of working in the field and getting into places with the discourse, that is absolutely true. People have never thought, and people are good people. They really don't want to do death. They just hadn't thought about it. And when we bring them there, you have to believe in the goodness in people's hearts, and it is there. The American people are not a vengeful people. They get scared because people press their fear buttons and it makes them think they have to do it, and politicians use it then as a political symbol. All you have in Montana is political symbolism on the books, and you have 2 human beings sitting there in those cells for 20 years. You are not a serious practitioner of the death penalty. You are not. In the Deep South we are. The 10 slave states that practice slavery do 80% of all our executions. You're not serious about it. And so the discourse that can go on in this state, and I believe that in 2011, you get the discourse going and you talk to the people and they start writing to their legislature, you are going to end the death penalty in Montana. And I'm glad to be a little bitty part of that. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sister Helen. And now I'm going to introduce to you all my pastor. And it's pretty pathetic that I'm going to read his bio, but I want to make sure that I get it all right. I should know it. But so Matt Randalls is the pastor of Headwaters Covenant Church, a new church starting in Helena. The vision of the church is to have a faith that's more than words. On the last Sunday of the month, instead of having a worship service, the church gathers for an all-church service project in the community. Pastor Randalls has a Master of Divinity from Fuller Theological Seminary, and so please help me in welcoming Pastor Matt Randalls.
What Heather didn't tell you is that she is our service project coordinator for our church, so she is the one who helps us make it all happen on the last Sunday of the month. And I stand here and I feel so honored to be in front of you, and I feel like I have no credentials to speak on this. It was about a year ago, a little over that, when Heather was talking about the death penalty, and I said, sure, I'm against the death penalty. She goes, you are? You're evangelical. And then she wanted me to speak at another event, and she said, they want you to come out and speak on this. I'm like, you can't find an evangelical pastor with a church of more than 50 people to talk on this? She's like, no. So that really is why I'm here. I listened to everyone speak today of why they're against it, and I resonated with everything said here. And the different traditions represented. And my spiritual director, Tom, and I are, I think, the lone evangelicals in the room. That's a problem. That's a problem. We don't have a problem in Montana with Catholics being against the death penalty. We don't have a problem with the UCC and the Lutherans and the Methodists being against the death penalty. How many Baptists are here today? That's a problem. That's a problem. And that's why I'm speaking about this. Because I come from the evangelical tradition. I actually come from the Presbyterian tradition. But I moved over to the Evangelical Covenant Church. And as I see it, you've heard sort of the coy little phrase, the Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. Well, the Bible says eye for an eye, life for life. What are we talking about? Why do we keep talking about this? The Bible says that. The conversation is over. Fry him. Execute him. Right? That's, now you know, I'm making light here, but when you talk to someone, that's what's going on in the back of their mind. So I've been discussing this with my good friend at Carroll College, theology professor there. And we've been discussing it and emailing it, and you know, he's of course coming from the Catholic perspective, and I'm from the evangelical perspective. And we were just talking about all the reasons. We were talking about this. And you know, we can talk about human dignity. We can talk about how even the vilest offender can be redeemed. We can talk about the purpose of punishment and justice in general. We can look at flaws and bias and inequalities. We can look at history and tradition. We can look at the practice of other developed Western nations. And let me tell you, that's not going to get you very far with evangelicals. We want to be like Europe? We can look at the exorbitant costs. But when it comes down to it, we're going to look at what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say? Now, Heather will tell you we need to present a menu of options. Absolutely, absolutely. When you talk about reasons against the death penalty with different people. I mean, I'm evangelical, and the cost and the pragmatism, those kind of things, those really resonate with me. I talk about those with people in my church, and they look like I'm crazy. You know, that's not resonating with them. And so as we as a movement work on this subject, work on this in Montana, as we engage evangelicals, this is always going to be very deep. You can talk about innocence. You can talk about these other things, bias, racism. What does the Bible say? How do we handle the Bible? Now, I wish I had like the answer for everything. I wish I was like those rabbis who had this all worked out. I haven't arrived on this subject. I haven't arrived all the way. Because as I look at it, so often it comes down to, well, yes, the Old Testament says X, Y, Z, but then Jesus says. We quickly get into this place of pitting Jesus against the angry God of the Old Testament. We have to apologize for what the Bible says. Oh, well, yes, man, they were pretty hard on the Canaanites there. They went through there and, you know, did ethnic cleansing. But now God is nicer. That's not going to get us far with evangelicals. We need a theology that can handle the God of the Old Testament, because it's the same as the God of the New Testament. We need to figure out how this works. And I wish I had the magic bullet that would do it. Obviously, we look to Jesus. He is the definitive revelation of God. He died for our sins. I love how you put it. There is no death that can add to that. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. I'm hanging on to that. I'm stealing that. So,
and that's also good to re-quote back to him that he who has not sinned cast the first stone.
yes, absolutely.
And I don't know why they ignore that.
We all have our proof texts.
That's right. Include Justice Scalia. Well, that's just what he wrote.
Right. So as I look at this, I see this vast population of evangelical Christians out there in Montana who aren't thinking deeply about this because it isn't brought up, it's not preached, it's not talked about. And we're taking it for granted. Oh yeah, we got 2 guys on death row. We're not big offenders here. It's not that big a deal. It's not urgent. Shouldn't we be worried about the poor? Shouldn't we be worried about the unborn? So it takes a backseat to other issues. And we can't settle for that. And we can't do it without them. We need to figure out how to engage them. I cannot be the only evangelical voice in Montana to speak on this subject. We can't settle for that. We need to cross the barriers and talk to Baptists about this, the evangelical free, the mega churches in Billings, in Bozeman, in Missoula. We don't have any in Helena, but we should be talking to the churches we have. And we need to say, this issue matters. And we're not going to do it alone. And I think that's what I have to say.
That's great.
Well, I just can't sit here and not say something. Okay, I want to speak on behalf of the evangelicals. I'm a Catholic sister, but I'm working with the evangelicals. And I can't say that, I don't want you to go out of here thinking that they're not concerned about the prison system. Because they are very much so, and that is in helping, being there in the prisons, talking with them, and also in the aftercare of helping them once they get out. And so I think one of the things that I'm experiencing is, where are we as the main, the main persons against, if we're against the death penalty, what about those people that are there in the prisons, and then what about all the ones from Deer Lodge that get dumped off here in Missoula with no sponsors, nobody to be there to help them to get back to society. So I see the evangelicals that I'm working with are not only putting out their time and their effort, but their money. It costs money to take care of a person who comes out with no place to go. One of the evangelicals has established even a nonprofit just to calls it the love thing. So I find it hard to think that evangelicals are for the death penalty. I think we got to be careful we don't make that blanket statement, okay? And I think that we have to be more into, if we're for reconciliation, well, what are we doing about that? Just to say get rid of the death penalty isn't helping people to be reconciled, because so many people in our prisons, they're poor, they're uneducated, they're from abuse, or there's mental, there's ADD people, there's, their Father Grace. Yeah. So I think it's really, really important that our invitation with the evangelicals is not that, we're against the death penalty and you're not. It's got to say, let's change the system. Yeah. Let's change the system.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Sister Doris, for those comments. And I have found that exact same thing. I mean, I've met with a lot of evangelical pastors all over the state, and I had the honor of talking with the National Association of Evangelicals in D.C., and they care so much about prison ministry and reentry. I mean, they do. So this is a bridge that we need to build. But I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be challenging, but I think you're right. There's no way that we can say every evangelical in the state or in the country is for the death penalty, because that's just not right. I think it's a discussion that's new, though, in those communities, and so that's why it's so important for us to reach out to them, but to be comfortable doing so, because they care about a lot of the same things we care about, which is another, point to this, is that we have to seek common ground. I mean, you can't, you're not going to get anywhere unless you seek common ground, and that's a great place to start with evangelicals, because that's something that they really value. So thank you for that.
Involved with what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And so that we understand each other, because otherwise we just become like Republicans and Democrats.
Right. Yeah, we don't want that. Someone give me a time check. Can someone tell me what time it is?
25 up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we are going to have a time for questions, I promise. Questions for Sister Helen, for Pastor Matt. But I just wanted to point out that I gave you a couple of resources at each of your places. The blue sheet is just some responses to biblical arguments in favor of the death penalty. They're nothing profound. It's just something that, some arguments that I've come across. I've worked with Matt on this a little bit too, and it's been helpful to me. So hopefully it will be helpful to you. Just some different different ways to think about some of those arguments. And then the red sheet I've found to be very useful and very helpful. It's just for us to know. It's called the Biblical Scorecard of. Tell me what it's called exactly. The Scorecard of Biblical Truth, is that right? Okay, so it's from a book that Dale Russinella wrote about the Bible and America's death penalty. And it goes through, I think it's 41 different things that the Bible says about the death penalty that we in America are not doing. And so it's useful sometimes in my conversations when I'm talking to someone and the conversation shifts to the Bible and what does the Bible say about the death penalty, I think sometimes it's useful to point out that we are not in accordance with the biblical death penalty in America. So even if you firmly stand on, well, the Bible is for the death penalty, God is for the death penalty, we're not carrying it out in a biblical way. So this gives you another tool to sort of talk about that way as well. So let's open it up for questions. And one more time, I did want to point out we have tons of resources up here, different faith statements against the death penalty, and all sorts of things. I have my business cards up here, so please, if you ever have questions about anything, death penalty related, please do contact me anytime. I would love to talk with you more. So, who has questions? Maureen.
It's really not a question. I remember back, I worked in the court system in Lake County, and in the early 70s, there was a program called Tower 7. And if any of you are familiar with the old prison, Tower 7 was the exit gate. And the group that I was a participant in helped folks who were being released from prison back into primarily back into a faith community, and then again into the larger community to help them find resources, employment, an apartment. And it became so huge that the participants who were trying to do the work became practically extinct because of resources and because of finances. But it was in existence for a short time, and it was effective for the most part. But it's an interesting, what Sister was talking about, a way to be available through interfaith groups. And so I know at the time I was raising a large family, and it was like a real, I didn't need to be this, but that's what I felt where God called me to be. And so because of resources and the economy, sometimes the energy that people have in the faith that they're operating from become, in essence, extinct. And so I guess the leadership needs to invoke or inspire, perhaps spiritually, other young people such as yourself. I'm always overwhelmed at your energy, Heather, and your young people's view of things, and I thank you for that.
Yes, Bob.
In working with some of our legislators in the last session, and with people in general, when you come to life issues, it seems most people base their decisions on emotion rather than facts. And so when you present people with facts to back up your feelings, it doesn't seem to have much effect. And I was wondering if anybody has some suggestions of how to overcome the emotions that are involved in this whole decision.
Did you want to answer?
Well, the greatest emotion there is love. And Christ came on earth to love not just the innocent, but the poor, the disadvantaged, the guilty. He was always loving the guilty. So poor old St. Peter, he was guilty of a lot of stuff, and God forgave him.
Can I just say something about that?
Yeah.
Because of course we want to come to love, but here's something I've found, that the heart of the emotion is everybody thinks if that happened to my daughter. If that happened to my wife, I know I want them dead. Because the outrage that we experience over the death of innocent people. And so when we hear about these crimes, we all experience that. And that is what we have to deal with. That is why our best witnesses are the victim's family. But if someone's experiencing that outrage over a victim's family, we have to stand with them in that outrage before we come to love. Because the outrage means I know a human life has been violated. I feel that. I feel anger over that. I feel frustration and trauma over that. And we have to stand in outrage. And any journey that we construct has got to bring people through the outrage and to stand with them there and then bring them over with us. And so that's not done in a just up-down discussion. But I find that when I'm talking to people and they are furious about these people that have done these crimes, and if I can just say back to them, I hear your pain, your outrage over what happened to innocent people. And I'm outraged too. That's a starting point of the conversation. Because of course we know we're supposed to come to love. We know Jesus said love the enemies. But how do you reach that? How do you get there? So that emotional journey is a huge one. In fact, Harry Blackman finally dissented on the Supreme Court from he said, I'll no longer tinker with the machinery of death, because finally those juries that are making decisions, that's not a reasoned process of law that goes on. It's just huge emotions that are in turmoil, and people, maybe their grandmother told them something or whatever. It's not, you can't really apply law when you're dealing with such emotion. That's all I want to say about that.
And even stand with them in their outrage, even if they don't come around your way of thinking.
Well, absolutely. Remember, conversation, it's ethical, I think, to feel outrage over the death of innocent human beings. Who's not outraged over that? If it were anybody in our family, we know that. Think where we'd be traumatized would be. You know, and then if somebody in a conversation, like those of us who are religious, say, well, you know, Jesus said to forgive. Like, I mean, there are horrible stories that victims' families tell about ministers saying, well, you know, your peace is going to lie. You're going to have to forgive. You know, you have to. I mean, that's so outrageous to say that to somebody. It's ethical to feel outrage. And then you have a starting point for a conversation. And of course, you don't just stay there. Then you get into the thing of, now let's see what happens when we let the government decide how to apply the outrage. And then you begin taking people into that. Look at what happens, first of all. And that would be, if I do have a chance to have a conversation with President Obama, it would be 5 minutes, I think. Because I'll say, you got to allow the full outrage of the community to be expressed. Have you noticed every time people of color are killed in this country, there's not a blip on the radar screen? When Native Americans are killed, when Latinos are killed, 90% of all the murders in New Orleans are African American people being killed. We never seek the death penalty for the death of people of color. It's a selective outrage. How can you entrust any government to apply this? To be the ones, to be the arbiters of this death or that death, we will do, even like Scalia, who says God's justice. That government has been appointed by God to be the ministers of God's wrath on evildoers. And he does his proof texting with Romans 13. Don't just think it's evangelical.
I'd like to follow her wonderful comments there on outrage. And it was last year that I read or heard the comment. It was one of the great reasons to be against the death penalty. You probably know, but a man who said, you know, I want the death penalty to be outlawed because if something happened to my family, I would be outraged and want to kill the person who did it. And he wanted a law to prevent him from carrying out his outrage. And I thought it really struck me that was pretty good thinking.
Yeah, he said, don't allow me to be a murderer too. You know, keep me from that. Yeah, I remember that too.
The state is murder by proxy. Then, if you support the state, doing
word break.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You know, we're talking about emotion, and I agree with what you said about it, but I guess as a Christian, I feel that I have the greatest emotional story that's ever been told as an argument against the death penalty, and that's the story of the crucifixion and death of Jesus Christ. And his words, and Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then his fellow, criminal, dying on the cross behind him, and he turns in and says, today you'll be with me in paradise. And the ultimate act of forgiveness. If that's not emotional, then there's no such thing.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to kind of move off of that emotional outrage in a different direction.
Sure.
While I was at the prison, when they were preparing for executions, in the 2 or 3 days ahead of time, all of the inmates were upset. Mm-hmm. And the rage in the inmates would rise to a volatility that was unbelievable. Well, one thing that I thought was fascinating was that on the day of executions, the staff, the guards, would call in sick. And they would always, the day before, have a practice, session, and had trouble finding anybody to volunteer to be the victim. To be the one being executed. So they do everything they can to look like they're the big tough guys, all year long. But when the executions came, the whole prison was awash with a different kind of emotion.
Absolutely. Well, and I've been really privileged to talk with some folks who work with the Department of Corrections, because that's another group that I do outreach to is any member of law enforcement, and obviously that includes corrections. And one of the mental health professionals there told me that, and she's witnessed, not witnessed, but she's been there for I think 2 out of the 3 last executions in Montana, and she talked about how the staff really view the death row inmate as more dangerous the closer they come to their execution date, because all they have to do is lash out and kill another inmate or a guard, and that immediately saves their life, because then they have to be alive to face trial. So you talk about prison safety here, and you talk about the Department of Corrections, and they have to be more on guard, because in order for this person to save their life, they could lash out. So it's just this really ridiculous process that corrections has to go through.
I find it fascinating that never gets to the press.
Absolutely.
How the staff are affected.
Yeah. I'm here. But totally,
the Montana prison guards get extra pay for participating in an execution. They do in some states, I understand.
I can't verify that one way or the other. I just know that the wardens kind of pick, the crew. They're a hand-picked crew, but even they are affected.
Right, and they have to volunteer. And we've talked to people who've been with those staff members after, and how they binge drink, or they like you said, or they call in sick, or they quit their jobs. We've known people who've never been able to work in a prison again, because how can that not deeply affect a person, But you're right, that's something that we don't talk about. And when I talk to legislators, it's something that they had never thought about. Who actually has to walk this person to their death? Who has to strap them down to the gurney? We don't think about those things, and we're not wired to do that. I don't care how tough you think you are, So.
One other point too of helping people through this emotional journey is when I'm bringing an audience through it, toward the end of it, after we've been over with the victims and what the victims have suffered, and you have to plunge in there. So you waited 20 years now for your justice and your closure, and so you're allowed to come and sit on the front row and now watch as the person's being killed in front of your eyes, and kind of just leave them with that. Can that heal, raise questions? But then toward the end, to just say to people, now I'm going to push you. You believe the person who did this crime the crime is so outrageous they deserve to die. Could you do it? Could you do it? And if you find a part of your soul saying, well, I don't know if I could do it, there's a part of your soul that has not said yes to the death penalty. Because if you got to hire somebody to kill for you and you don't want to be there, there's a part of us. And we have to go to that place. I want to see him die. Well, could I do it? And it's a personal responsibility question. And it's also a deeply emotional question.
I've often thought the governor should be the one to push the plug.
No, all of them should be.
He's the one that knows the benefits.
They never will. They separate themselves.
Yeah. Did you have a question back there, sir?
Well, a comment, I guess, and a question, and it involves and I think probably in a way that DNA has maybe provided some of the strongest arguments against the death penalty that there are, and I think it resonates, and I say this in part because of my family, extended family, which covers the gamut of political and religious beliefs, but there is a sense of outrage about innocent victims of crime. There should be no less sense of outrage about an innocent victim of capital punishment. And now we, as a gentleman that first talked, mentioned some figures, and I think that's a way to respond to not only the emotional aspect of it, but the biblical aspect of it. God said, you know, judge not, lest ye be judged, and vengeance is mine. Well, even if you believe that the state should have that right, how can you believe that the state should have that right when it makes so many mistakes? And when the state puts to death an innocent person, and I've had people say to me, well, that's a very, very, very small percentage. And my response is, well, what if it was your brother?
Absolutely.
Yeah, would you feel that it was a very small percentage?
Yeah, totally.
And that was okay. So I think that's it's provided a lot of ammunition to use with people from different various philosophies.
Yeah, and one is too many. That's what I say. One is too many, and how can someone say, no, actually maybe 5 is too many, I guess. You know what I mean? I mean, 1 is too many. And I think, and to go back to what you were asking, Bob, I think you're right, this is an emotional issue. And so I think the more that we can make it personal, like you said, and saying, well, what if it was your brother, your father, your son? I think the more that we can make this issue personal, and the more that we can, I think that, you know, that speaks to people's emotions. Because if you just talk about facts and it's more expensive and this, I mean, maybe that will resonate with some people, but I think you're so right that there's this emotion there. And so we have to sort of relate, you know, emotions and our personal stories and other people's stories so that we can play to other people's emotions too, if that makes sense. I mean, I think you're right. When we try to meet fact with an emotional issue, it doesn't always go. So it's important to bring it home for people and make them understand this could have happened to you. This could be you. So other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is a question, but it just kind of occurred to me when you're talking about outrage, you know, and that they somehow the system of justice is supposed to satisfy that outrage. Well, I was thinking of the outrage people felt about Madoff. You know, like, why didn't we just kill him? That was the case. And it seemed like 150 years was sufficient for Madoff. You know, I mean,
Some people would have killed him.
Yeah, I mean, it's problematic when we leave it up to.
Doesn't that also get to the fact that none of us in this room would ever face the death penalty? We might kill someone, but we're very unlikely to have that happen to us. We're white, middle class, we can get good lawyers, we can have temporary insanity, and everybody will buy the story. So we are not going to ever be on death row. And sometimes that helps people to say, you know, this couldn't happen to you. You could go and torture somebody, and you probably would figure a way to get off.
There's another issue, and it was in the news in the paper here a couple of days ago in Missoula, that advocates of the death penalty very emotionally dredge up, which is child rape.
Oh.
That they, you know, they may not even support death for murders, but when it comes to child rape, they will. I guarantee you, the support for the death penalty among for child rapists would be much higher than murderers. And that's one that you constantly hear.
Right, and it's not on the books in Montana.
The Louisiana legislature passed that. It's a Supreme Court turned down. We won't get points for this.
There was a man accused a 70-year-old man in Missoula
yeah.
accused of raping a 4-year-old girl. That story is online in Missoulian, and the comments online start with fry him, smoke him, pull the switch on this guy. He hasn't even gone to court yet.
Well, that happened to the man who stomped on the kitty cat.
Yep. He got death threats for
and he shot himself. I mean, you know, he was so scared that.
He shot himself?
Yeah.
He killed himself.
He abused a cat, ran in the paper, and then he got death threats. And then,
Well, look at the Democrats who passed health care reform. They got death threats.
But yeah.
No, but I mean, all that.
But yeah, we do. We hear that a lot about child rapists, and the thing in Montana is, I mean, at least now that's not going to happen. Even if that guy's convicted, it's not on our books, you know. So people, and I think there's total merit to what Sister Helen said about this moral outrage that we feel, and we should be upset about that. But then what do we do with it, and how does that translate?
Well, it may not be on our books, you know, as this white middle-class American, whatever. However, it doesn't take much to have mistaken identity. So it might very well be on our books, whether we want it or not. Identity is a strange thing, and you just never know what tomorrow's going to bring. You don't.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I just want to throw another little thing in here. As I've been chaplain at the State Psychiatric Hospital for 13 years, you know, I see some really heinous crimes committed by the mentally ill. But isn't it strange that society will set the mentally ill aside and say, we're not going to take their lives, but then we select the people we do want to kill?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Well, I think it's about time to wrap up, and thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for being involved. And I wanted to add a couple minutes here at the end about if you're at all interested in, having your faith community get involved in this issue. I'm sure that many of you are already involved in this. I know that you are, but talk to me. I mean, we can provide a speaker to come to your church. We can help you host a discussion or show a film. Matt and I have talked extensively about how to reach out to evangelical communities, and we've decided that we're going to try to do some roundtables that are pretty informal and just discussions. And so if you have any inclination to want to do anything like that, please do. We really need your help, and we really are serious about passing this bill in 2011. We really thought we had it in 2009. We really thought we had it. So this is not something that we're just kind of starting to do long term. This is our push. We have a year, a little less, and we need your help. And we need you to reach out to your legislators, and we need your contacts in other parts of the state too, because luckily Missoula is really great on this issue for the most part. So we need your help in the Bitterroot, and we need your help in the Flathead. So really, please, if you want to get involved in this, do talk to me. Take my business card. I would love to talk with you about how we can get you involved. So thanks for coming, and I think there's a little break now. So everybody, and take stuff from up here. So.